Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So, Non-Strategic Planning Committee for the 18th of November 2025. Item number 1, apologies for absence and notification of any substitute members. Could I start by asking the Democratic Services Officer if there are apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Carley, Councillor Smith and Councillor Tarbin, and we have Councillor Jonathan Harris as a substitute for the Liberal Democrat group. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest on any of the items tonight from the members, please? No, excellent. Thank you. Item 3. Everybody okay with the minutes of the last meeting from November the 6th? Okay, I'll sign those. Thank you. Okay, I'll move on to Chair's announcements. Members of the public are permitted to film, broadcast and report on the meeting, subject to the efficient running of the meeting not being affected. Only those people who have registered in line with the committee's speaking procedure may address the committee. Members of the public are requested not to call out during the committee's discussions on any item, and anybody who repeatedly disrupts the meeting may be asked to leave. All speakers will have 3 minutes in which to make their statement, except where Chair's discretion has been applied, and are asked to remain seated after they have addressed the committee to answer any questions the committee may have. The meeting is being webcast on the Council's corporate YouTube channel. Therefore, when speaking, please speak clearly and concisely into the microphone at all times. There are no planned fire drills this evening, so if the alarm does sound, evacuation instructions will be given by Democratic Services. Thank you. Please ensure any devices are switched off or onto silent. And for the benefit of the public watching remotely, I'll now introduce the top table, starting at my furthest right, please.
Teresa Boyd, Planning Solicitor.
Richard Woods, Democratic Services Officer for the Council.
Councillor Adrian Cartwright, Chairman tonight.
Eamon McDowell, Team Leader for the Development Management Team North area.
Rebecca Bates, Principal Planning Officer.
Thank you very much. Item 5, do we have any proposed committee site visits, pre-committee site visits for next meeting? No, okay. No site visits ahead of the next meeting on the 4th of December. Item 6, 381 Harleston Road, Northampton. I'm going to hand over to the case officer, Rebecca Bates, to begin the presentation, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening. This application is seeking permission for the construction of 82 dwellings with 35% affordable housing provision on site, provision for vehicular access, amenity space, including a local area of play, and hard and soft landscaping. The application site comprises of a brownfield site in the Duston area of Northampton. The site is surrounded by residential dwelling houses in all directions, with industrial units and a supermarket to the north, situated over Harleston Road, and a small business premises such as a car garage to the immediate west. An area of woodland exists to the east of the site, which runs the full depth of the site. The site is allocated for residential housing under the Northamptonshire Local Plan Policy H01, allocation reference 0720. This is the red line boundary for the application site, which includes the existing woodland, which will be retained and protected from any built development. Next slide. This slide shows the illustrative layout for the proposed development, along with the vehicular access, a pedestrian access point which will lead to the local area of play, and public open space which is adjacent to the woodland area. A proposed water attenuation area is situated in the northwestern corner of the site. Various landscaping is proposed throughout the site. This slide shows the proposed site and block plan for the site with the extent of the residential development clearly outlined. The existing woodland is shown to be retained. This is the proposed landscaping plan for the whole site with the woodland area clearly retained. Various landscaping is proposed throughout the site which will be secured through relevant conditions. This slide presents the proposed street scene along the main road throughout the development site. The plans provide illustrative details of the proposed house types, comprising of apartments, terrace, semi and detached dwellings. The application site for the residential development is brownfield land, which has been allocated for residential development under the local plan. Due to being situated within a residential area of Northampton, the proposal will be seen in context to its site and surroundings. The scheme is considered to provide a series of benefits, including policy-compliant 35% on-site affordable housing, on-site public open space, and a local area of play, and Section 106 development contributions for the local area. There are no technical reasons as to why the proposed development should be refused. Statutory consultees have provided no objections to the proposal, and any impacts on the proposed development can be managed via conditions and through the Section 106 legal agreement. It is therefore considered that the proposed development is policy compliant and the application is recommended for approval subject to conditions and the Section 106 legal agreement. For members' attention, an updated conditions list has been provided via the addendum, which has been subject to and agreed by all relevant statutory consultees. And as you can see on the slide, these are photographs of within and around the application site. Thank you.
Thank you very much. For the benefit of everybody, Councillor Breeze has just arrived. Means she can't vote on this item, but can ask questions as she pleases. Speaking of which, do we have any questions from the committee for the officer? Okay, thank you. In that case, we'll move to questions. First off, can we have Councillor Vincent Clive, please, who's a local ward member?
Good evening, Chair, and members of the committee. I have said before that I do believe this development could, in principle, be a net positive for Duston. It supports the Council's local housing and affordable homes strategy. And I want to be clear, I'm not opposed to homes being built here at all, but I am opposed to homes being built badly or in bad context. And that's, I wanted to highlight some concerns around that tonight, and I will try to be direct but also constructive. So, first, antisocial behaviour is already a live issue locally. Designing it out now is infinitely cheaper and more effective than policing it later. Expert advice on this appears to have been received, but I don't believe it's been acted upon. Ignoring that advice will damage residents' quality of life for decades to come and harm trust in us to get things right. And so I think we can and must do better at this stage. Second, WNC's educational services did not respond to the consultation and no S106 contribution was sought for education. Duston's sole secondary school is chronically oversubscribed, with the effective catchment area being less than 1 mile. Whilst this site sits inside the existing catchment area, building more houses without providing more school places simply pushes existing residents further away, with children being driven 3 miles or more instead of being able to walk to school locally. These plans do nothing to fix that shortfall, and the Council has failed to give me assurances that this is being adequately addressed as part of any other plans at this time. Thirdly, healthcare. The ICB says that no S106 contribution is necessary because capacity exists locally. Local people know this not to be the reality. St Luke's remains one of the poorest performing GP surgeries in the town. The latest NHS survey is damning. 84% can't get through by phone, 91% struggle online, and only 39% describe contact as good. It's also now virtually impossible to access NHS dental treatment in the area either. Adding several hundred more residents without funding mitigation is unacceptable both for existing patients and for new ones who will move in expecting proper care in the area.
1 minute left.
Fourth, integration and sustainable travel. Harston Road is a busy road with a history of fatal accidents in the immediate vicinity. In many ways, it retains much of the characteristics of having been a 40-mile-per-hour road, and some road users still treat it that way. I've been working with residents and the parish council to try and reduce speeds in the area, but more could be done by the council. The agenda document claims it's still a 40-mile-per-hour road, and with a working fixed speed camera, both are untrue. It calls into the question the veracity of other claims within the report. Harleston Road was also omitted from the recent draft cycling and walking infrastructure plan, and I think that's a shame given the context of this site and other developments in the area. And finally, good governance. On the 25th of September this year, almost every member present voted to approve, or a majority of the members present voted to approve the budget to buy this very site based on these very plans. Officers of the Council recommended purchase then. Officers of the Council now recommend planning approval. I'm not alleging any impropriety, but there is a clear risk of perceived predetermination or conflict of interest by our residents, and this is a concern that has been levelled at members of our planning committees only weeks ago. You must be seen tonight to scrutinise this application rigorously and independently. Chair, colleagues, this is a decent scheme, but it could be better if the issues were addressed now and the advice recommended by consultees and residents taken on board. And I hope the committee will consider that advice on meaningful changes before granting permission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clive. Any members of the committee have any questions for the councillor? Councillor McMurtry.
Well, yeah, I was just wondering, so you said about designing out crime now, and that's important to you. What aspects about it specifically don't you like from that perspective? I'd just like to get an understanding of that.
Yeah, so within the document you had to read for this evening is the police statement. They actually opposed the development on the site, and they cite a considerable number of reasons, including where gardens don't back onto other gardens, where there's access at the side of rear gardens, all the parking down the back of the flats being an open space, and there's a number of other things contained within that report as well, which I trust that all of the committee members here have read this evening.
Thank you. Councillor Harris.
That was in fact the same question I was going to ask, so thank you, you've answered it.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else have any questions? No? Okay, thank you very much. Next speaker will be Stephanie Eastwood, the agent for the applicant. You'll have 3 minutes. I'll let you know in 2 minutes if you've got a minute left. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman and members. I'm Stephanie Eastwood. I'm a director at Avison Young. I'm a chartered town planner. I'm instructed by Vistry Group in relation to its proposals for residential development at Harleston Road in Northampton. Vistry was created in January 2020 following a merger between Galliford Try Partnerships, Linden Homes and Bovis Homes, and subsequently combined with Countryside Partnerships, becoming one of the UK's leading home builders. Vistry is an has industry-leading experience of delivering both private and affordable housing, and is one of Homes England's partners and on national frameworks for a number of registered providers of affordable housing. Vistry has a strong track record of providing good quality and affordable homes across Northamptonshire, and this site will continue to follow on from this success. The site is currently vacant and is located in a highly sustainable location in the urban area of Northampton. The application follows the allocation of the site in the Northampton Local Plan Part 2, and the principle of housing development at this site is therefore accepted and fully in accordance with the development plan. Following the submission of the application, Vistry is engaged and worked positively with officers and consultees to address comments raised, including those raised by the police designing out crime officer. It's also engaged with the local community and the parish council, and in response to those discussions has made a number of amendments to the proposals. As a result of those discussions, the additional information submitted and the amendments made, all design and technical matters have been addressed to the satisfaction of the Borough Council's officers. There are no objections from the local highway authority, lead local flood authority, the council's ecologist, design officer, environmental health officer, archaeologist or tree officer subject to conditions. Dustin Parish Council has also raised no objection to the proposals for development of the site. The 82 dwellings proposed will make an important contribution to the local council's local housing needs and support delivery of housing in an area, including a policy-compliant amount of affordable housing. The site is to be accessed via a new simple priority junction with appropriate geometry and visibility displays as agreed with the local highway authority. The proposals will also deliver new areas of public open space, including a new play area, sustainable drainage features, including a drainage pond, which ensures that the proposals would not increase flood risk elsewhere. They will also retain the existing woodland and substantial tree belt along the south and western boundaries, which will ensure that the amenity of neighbouring properties is protected.
1 minute left.
The proposals would also deliver significant benefits and Section 106 contributions, including redevelopment of brownfield land and delivery of high-quality residential development that will make a far more positive contribution to the character of the area than the existing buildings. We will deliver on-site biodiversity enhancements of over 18%, which exceed the minimum 10% biodiversity net gain requirement. They'll provide new green infrastructure, including new formal and informal open space, create a new uncontrolled pedestrian crossing on Harleston Road, deliver economic benefits through the creation of jobs in the construction phase, and a contribution of £16,000 towards local library provision. If permission is granted, Vistry will look to bring the site forward quickly and aim to make a start on site in early 2026 once the relevant conditions and technical approvals have been resolved. The site will therefore deliver housing and contribute towards the Council's housing land supply in the short term. We therefore welcome and fully support the conclusion reached by your officers that planning permission should be granted in accordance with conditions and planning obligations. As such, we respectfully request that permission be granted in line with the recommendation of your officers. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Do any of the members have any questions for the Speaker? Councillor Harris, please.
Yes, thank you. In the update, I still note that there's some concerns from Anglia Water around used water. There's an objection that still exists. Is that correct? Can you tell me how that's going to be addressed?
Yes, no problem. So Anglian Water did comment earlier on during the consideration of the application, and at that point in time raised no objections to the proposals in relation to capacity of the sewerage network or the water treatment network. But officers have recommended a condition be attached to the permission, which would require the applicant to submit a scheme for foul surface water for approval by the local authority in consultation with Anglian Water, which should include what we call a pre-development inquiry, and that should be a process through which we can agree an appropriate foul water drainage scheme for the site.
Question, if I may.
Yeah, please.
And in response to the point that's been raised about concerns in terms of safety, can you comment on what amendments have been made as a result of those issues being raised?
Yes, so there are a number of comments raised by the police designing out crime officer. One of those is in relation to the sort of open space, and we had worked through a kind of a careful dialogue with the council's design team in relation to the location of that play area, but also in terms of the sort of treatment and overlooking of that space. So the play area is located over towards the woodland, but it's designed now so that there are dwellings overlooking that open space, and there is also a pedestrian connection through from the site frontage to that local area for play, such that there are connections through and better opportunities for natural surveillance of the open space. In terms of comments made around rear boundaries and access to those, the applicant has agreed to a condition to secure boundary treatments and details of those boundary treatments to ensure that suitable boundary treatments are provided and that any access to areas where there are concerns over antisocial behaviour can be restricted.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any points the officers wish to come back on any of that?
Yes, please, Chairman. So just in terms of the design out crime officer comments, as the applicant has just stated, there has been conditions provided, which are provided on the updated addendum and on the original conditions list, which address a number of concerns raised by the design out crime officer. So they are to provide boundary treatments for plots 1 to 30 inclusive, which will restrict any access which is undesirable to plots, and also to provide boundary treatments against the woodland area to protect it from any antisocial behaviour, as well as location of bin and cycle storage and street lighting. In terms of Section 106, no information has been presented to provide a need for an educational contribution, and the NHS team did confirm that a healthcare contribution was not needed in this instance. In terms of the Anglian Water point raised, Anglian Water have requested a condition if the application is to be approved, which will require details to be submitted about the foul water drainage, which has been included on the updated condition list, which was sent by the addendum this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for the officer on that? Okay, in that case, move into the debate, please. Who wants to go first? Well, Councillor Harris?
Yeah, I'd just like to pick up the point that was made earlier by Councillor Clive. I am correct, I believe that this is an allocated site in the local plan. So from that point of view, I think that really sort of annuls the issue of predetermination, because already it's in the local plan as an allocated site. I think it's more about, obviously, the specifics of the site itself. So I hope that clears that one up. I mean, I think that it's... you know, the general point I would raise is it definitely brings much needed houses of this particular type that we need. It is in the local plan, and from my own perspective, assuming that those conditions are correctly picked up and identified, those issues that we've raised, then I personally think that we should tonight be recommending approval for this in line with officers' advice. The only other comment I would make about the speed issue, again, I presume I'm right in saying that's not a planning issue, but that is something that could be addressed independently in terms of speed reduction if needed in that area.
The application has been subject to consultation with the local highway authority, who have been provided all the documents and have had direct correspondence with the applicant. They have confirmed they raise no objection and there'll be no highway safety concerns if the site was to be developed.
And just to add to that, notwithstanding that, though, there are mechanisms in place should the parish council wish to pursue speed reductions at some future stage. Is that correct?
Yeah, again, through you, Chairman. I mean, obviously, the Highway Authority have been consulted on the application and their views and recommended conditions are set out. The scheme has been amended to address that. Yeah, you're right. The Highway Authority can unilaterally decide to alter speed limits in particular areas where there are concerns about highway safety matters within the limits of the highway under their Highway Regulations, Highway Act.
Thank you. Anyone else? I do have concerns of, you know, residential areas coming out into 40-mile-an-hour streets myself. It's recently been adjusted down to 30 in, you know, coming off the roundabout at the top of Toaster Road for that very reason. It can be all right until it isn't all right, but I assume highways will, or the parish council will jump in on that. Yeah. If no one has anything else to say, does someone want to make a proposal? Councillor Harris?
Yes, I would propose that we should accept officers' advice to approve this, subject to those conditions and those specific issues that we've discussed this evening.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder anywhere? Councillor McMurtry?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to second that.
Thank you. Please, can you summarise?
Thank you, Chair. Just to summarise the proposal then from Councillor Harris is to accept the officer's recommendation to grant permission to this development, subject to the conditions set out in the report, the amended conditions set out in the committee updates, and the Section 106 agreement to secure the obligations set out in the report. Over to you, Chair, for the vote.
Thank you. Could I have a vote of hands for who's in favour of accepting the proposal, please? Okay, thank you. Move on to item 7. West Lodge Farm, Blisworth Road, Courtine Hall. Case Officer Shamal London, please, when you're ready, can you begin your presentation? Thank you.
Evening, members. This application relates to West Lodge Farm on Blisworth Road in Courtine Hall. The application comes before the committee as it's a major application. So this is an aerial view of the application site. The site consists of a complex of agricultural barns sited to the north of Blisworth Road. Some of the structures on the site have been converted into commercial office buildings, and some appear to still be in use in connection with agriculture. The site is located within the open countryside. Can I have the next slide? Yes. The scheme proposes the conversion of an existing agricultural building to a farm shop and a cafe, which would be use class E, and the conversion of that building to also 2 commercial storage units, B2 and B8 use, and a proposed new access from Courtine onto Courtine Hall Road, along with car parking, bin storage, landscaping, and associated works. There have been no objections to the application. By way of history, I think it's important to note that planning permission was recently approved earlier in 2025 on the 6th of February, when an application came in on this site. That scheme was largely the same as the scheme before you today. There were the exception of a few elements outlined as follows. It's equally important to note that the planning permission is extant in that it can be carried out at any time, the permission that was granted earlier this year. The differences with this subject application and the extant permission is the increase of the Class E element, which is the farm shop and the cafe, the floor space to include the mezzanine floor for the cafe area. This would be an increase in size of approximately 132 square meters. Secondly, a reduction in the commercial floor space element from 182 to 143 square meters, and the provision of a separate staff restroom area and staff toilet facilities, so essentially back of house facilities. There's also another difference with the application is the increase in the red line site area, which has increased the site to 1,280 square meters from 1,037 square meters. And to accommodate for this increase, there's been an increase in the number of car, cycle, motorcycling parking spaces from 53 to 83 for car parking spaces, 14 to 18 for cycling spaces, and from 3 to 5 for motorcycle spaces to reflect the increase in the floor space. While the gross internal area has increased, the retail floor space remains below 1,000 square meters. Sorry. There's been no increase in the footprint of the building. Thank you. So this is a comparison of the existing and the proposed site location plan. So to the left, you have the existing, and then to the right, where the cursor is currently, that's the proposed site location plan. Can I get the next slide? Thank you. So this is a comparison of the extant permission that was granted early in 2025 in comparison to the application that's before you. So as you can see, there would be, as I aforementioned, an increase in the red line, also additional car parking spaces. However, the footprint of the building remains the same. However, the floor area for the mezzanine floor, sorry, has been increased to include the cafe usage. The access remains the same. The attenuation pond also remains the same. Yes, everything else about the application remains the same. Can I have the next slide, please? So these are existing elevations of the agricultural building and proposed elevation of the building upon completion. Thank you. So these are existing and proposed floor plans. So to the left, you've got the existing floor plans, and then to the right, the proposed. So as you can see, the first floor plan shows where the additional Class E space would be increased. So that's on the mezzanine floor. So in the earlier application, that mezzanine floor was largely to be used for electrical plant storage. However, However, now that space is going to be used for the cafe, the toilet spaces, staff room, and a smaller space for electric plant storage. Thanks. Thank you. So these are photos of the application site. So, sorry. The furthest photo to the left is the rear elevation of the application site, and the photo in the middle is just a view to the rear of the application site, and this photo closest to me is a photo with an angle of the front elevation. And again, the photo to the far left is a view of the front elevation, And the 3 photos closest to me on the right, so that's just to give context of the site. So this is to the front of the subject building. So as you can see, these buildings in green, that's an example of B2 and B8 storage that's on the site. And also, offices that's currently used on the site. Have the next slide. Thank you. So these are photos of different angles of the application site. So I'll start off where the arrow is on the bottom middle. Where that arrow is where the proposed access is going to be. So that proposed access would be to the subject building. And the photo that is closest to us, that's the bottom right, that's of the existing access to the site. So the application does propose a second access, so there'll be 2 accesses to the site. Obviously, the proposed access would be to the building to the rear that's proposed to be converted, and the access that the cursor is currently on is the existing access to the site. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. And these are photos of, these are just 2 photos of the application site to give long views of the site, to just give a wider context of the site from the east. Thanks. And this is just a 3D illustrative, a 3D illustration of the site of what is proposed to look like upon completion. And final slide. So in summary, the proposed development is considered to provide economic, social, and environmental benefits. Secondly, relevant matters have all been addressed within the body of the report and are considered acceptable. As such, members are urged to agree to the officer's recommendation for approval, subject to conditions as set out within the committee report. Thank you.
Thank you, Shamal. Do any of the members have any questions for the officer? No? Okay, thank you. In that case, we'll move on to the public speakers, and we have Chloe French, the agent for the applicant. You'll have 3 minutes, Chloe. I'll let you know when 2 minutes have gone and you've got a minute left.
Thank you. I probably haven't got much to add, actually, because the planning officer's kindly updated you on the main changes that we wanted to address. Obviously, it's got planning permission. The estate is in the process of implementing the consent at the moment, but obviously, having looked at it, now it's a reality. They wanted to create some more efficiencies. They wanted to have more staff facilities because they were not quite working how we'd got it previously laid out, which is sort of what's generated the changes. The access is already approved, as Mr. London has said, and the technical approval is currently going through at the moment to try and get ready to start in the spring. So there isn't a great deal to add apart from, yes, the majority has planning permission already, and we obviously welcome the updated conditions and welcome the further support and hope that you can recommend approval. I'm here for any questions.
Thank you. Do any members have any questions for the speaker? No? Thank you very much. Okay, in that case, we'll move the committee to debate the application, please. No, straightforward. Okay.
Yeah, I'll just say, I mean, you know, it's already got approval for the smaller site. I don't see any planning reason why this couldn't go ahead, and I think it's a good thing that they're introducing more provision for staff. So I think we should go with officers' advice just based on what I'm feeling. So I'll just, yeah.
Yeah, the locals seem to want it, so you're going to make the proposal then, are you?
Yeah, I'm happy to propose that we follow officers' advice.
Thank you. Would anyone like to second? Thank you, Councillor Harris. Democratic Services, could I ask you to sum up, please?
Thank you, Chair. We have a proposal to accept the officer's recommendation from Councillor McMurtry, subject to the conditions set out in the report. That is seconded by Councillor Harris. To you, Chair, for the vote.
Thank you. Could you indicate your approval for this application by raising your hands, please? Thank you very much. Item number 8 has been withdrawn, so that's no longer going to be heard. And item number 9, land off Catesby Road, Helidon. I'm going to hand over to the case officer for this, Eamon McDowell, to begin his presentation.
Thanks, Chairman. The application site lies outside the village of Helidon and benefits from a previous permission for an agricultural building. Unfortunately, the applicant chose not to implement the approval as given and implemented a slightly different approval in terms of what's now on site. The benefit of this application is retrospective, so you don't need to imagine what the building is going to look like. You can see it in a full Technicolor on the photographs when we get to them. I'll just show on site. This is the application site, and that's the siting of the proposed building. But to give it context, the site is open countryside. It is an agricultural operation, and the principle of a building on that particular site has been previously established by previous authority, Daventry District Council. In terms of that approval, you'll just see on this dotted outline is the site of the buildings that were previously approved, which basically comprise 2 buildings with a central courtyard area. What has happened is the applicant has turned the building sort of 90 degrees and effectively filled in the central courtyard area. In all other respects, the building is similar in appearance to that was previously approved. You'll see from the report we've assessed the impact in terms of its impact on the village, the form and character of the village, its impact on nearby residential properties and also upon highway safety. I should add the Highway Authority have recommended a condition in terms of the access to improve the area of surface, hard surface at the entrance to the site closest to the adopted highway. But in all other regards, officers consider the proposal, whilst it does have an impact in its immediate setting, is typical of any other building in the open countryside in terms of livestock buildings. It is reasonably necessary for the purposes of agriculture, and although it's been reorientated, its impact is not judged to be sufficiently harmful to warrant refusing the application. Should point out that officers have sought to engage with the applicant in terms of inviting this application. It did take quite a considerable time, and in the absence of a submitted application, the council proceeded to serve an enforcement notice to require this central area to be taken out so that it looked more like the original approval. That enforcement is the subject of an appeal, which is yet to be heard. But in the absence, until such, given that we've now got the application before us, I think members are entitled to consider this application on its merits, and if approved, the enforcement proceedings would no longer proceed on the basis that the development as carried out has been regularised, albeit in retrospective form with conditions attached as set out in the report. Again, for the benefit of members, I did promise some Technicolor photographs. This is the aerial view of the site. As I say, that's the village itself. This is the site itself, and that's the nearest neighbour, Long Furlong. This is the access, this is the main road coming into the village from Catesby. It's a tree-lined road and is also quite undulating, shall we say, the local topography, such that on the approach to the site, you get very, very limited glimpses of the building. And again, that's the building in question. And as I say, you can see it. That's the view from the site entrance, looking up towards the building. So the approved building would have been in this location anyway, sort of side on. These are views I've taken from sort of Google Street View, but again, this is coming out of the village. And again, what you've got is quite a nice tree-lined road. You do get glimpses of the building itself. but those soon disappear in terms of sort of local vegetation and topography. So on balance, officers have considered, whilst it is a retrospective application, we're required to judge the application on its planning merits, and on its planning merits, we consider the proposal to be acceptable and accordingly recommending approval, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Do any members have any questions for the officer? Councillor Frost, please. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just to recap, the appeal, they're appealing the enforcement. So we've chosen to enforce, and they've appealed the enforcement. That's what you mean, yeah?
Again, through you, Chairman, yes, we in the absence of an application to regularise it, I think officers in the enforcement section felt no option but to serve an enforcement. Again, that's an under-enforcement. It doesn't require the complete removal of the building. It would require that central aspect to be taken out. But since that enforcement notice has been served, an application has been submitted to regularise it, and it's down to the council to consider that on its merits. If the council considers that to be acceptable, then the application is approved. If the council, for whatever reason, decides, no, we don't want this, you obviously need to set out the reasons why why you're going against officer advice, and clearly that would then have to be taken into account. But that's for yourselves to think about.
Chair, if I may, I'm a bit confused because why I didn't realise this about the enforcement. Why would we have asked them to remove that central barn when the original permission was a completely different orientation? Ordinarily, the enforcement things that I've been involved with, they when a landowner ignores planning advice, ignores the planning permission they've been given, ordinarily we would ask them to go back to what they've got permission to do.
Please.
Again, enforcement it's a discretionary option that's given to the council. In terms of going for enforcement, that was seen to be an appropriate step to be taken on the grounds that middle part was the most offending aspect of the development in the enforcement officer's opinions, and in the absence of an application to be submitted. The applicant has chosen to submit an application. We have now assessing that application, and that's before you. And again, you're now required to look at this application on its planning merits and make a decision based on the information before you.
Thank you. I didn't realise that planning officers had the ability to sort of unilaterally overrule, a planning approval. But that aside, can I ask a couple of questions about if I can, Chair? This is just it might be a semantics thing. In the report 7.1, the first sentence makes complete sense. It makes complete sense. It says the principle of agricultural development on this site has been previously established by the grant of permission for 2 agricultural buildings under blah 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 blah. It's the next bit that I'm confused about. It says this proposal therefore fails to be determined on its merits, having regard to, and then it lists the reasons. There are 6 reasons. Forgive my stupidity. What does that mean?
Well, again, through you, Chairman, the principle of an agricultural building has been established on the site. So the idea of having an agricultural building has been accepted by the council on its merits. This is different to that building physically, and that's what we're saying. You make a judgment on the physical appearance of this building, not the fact that it's an agricultural building or not, that it's not required for the agricultural unit, because that has been accepted in the past that the unit requires a building on that site. This particular building overlaps the previously approved cited building. But what we're saying as officers that having regard to that previous approval, having regard to the differences between the approval and what's now on site, we think on balance it should be considered acceptable now that we have an application before us. Up until then, we didn't have an application before us, and hence we felt the need to progress with the enforcement proceedings.
Sorry, Chair, being presumptuous there. So I'm just wondering if there's a typo next year which has confused things. Because it says fails to be determined rather than falls to be determined. And That's the changes as a typo. Yeah.
It'll be the accent, I'm afraid.
Right.
Well, was this typed up under AI and they didn't understand it?
Typed up with lots of other things on my mind at the time, but yeah, sorry, that'd be my fault, in which case it falls to be determined. I apologise, sorry.
No, it makes sense. One last question. Sorry for hogging all the questions. Everyone. The justification for this is because there's not enough agricultural storage in place currently, but on Google Earth, and we can look it on there if you like, there's a lot of agricultural buildings next to the farmhouse. And so my question is sort of two parts really. Did you, yeah, exactly, yeah, I don't know if you can even zoom in on there. It's just above the pub, yeah.
Yeah, again, through you, Chairman, I mean, this is something that was considered at the time, but basically this operation is entirely separate from that. This group of buildings, they were farm buildings, but they also secured permission for various holiday lets. That's also a conservation area, and I think these were things that were considered at the time when, historically, a prior approval was granted here, lower down the site. Then the application came in, the previous application for approval here. So, in terms of again, I'm not wishing to put words in your mouth, but presumably you're suggesting why not locate it here. I think really the point is that the previous council, Daventry, accepted a building in this location. So the principle of a building on that location has been established. What you're looking at here is the difference between that approval and what's now before you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any questions for the officer? Yeah, Councillor Harris, please.
Thank you, Chair. A question in regards to the form of the original design. So was it effectively a courtyard in the middle?
Yeah, I'll just go back again with the cursor. So if you can see, there's outlined here is the siting of the original approval. So yeah, you had two buildings separated by a central courtyard. So what you've got now are, again, basically it's this building. So these are pretty much identical to the two rectangles of the rectangular buildings you see. So but it's this central courtyard that's been filled in. And obviously it's been turned at a 90-degree angle, so that the ridges are now seen sort of down the site, whereas before the ridges ran sort of north to south. So in effect, the main difference is the reorientation and the introduction of this central sort of bay to create sort of a larger building. But ultimately, in planning terms, it's a judgment as to how harmful is that impact. And what we're saying is we don't think, given the fallback, given the previous permission, that it's sufficiently harmful to warrant refusing the application, bearing in mind the needs of the agricultural unit.
And in terms of design and form and materials, nothing different to the original?
Nothing different. It's entirely this. It's typical of these types of buildings in rural areas. They're sort of Yorkshire boarding, sort of solid at the ground, and then sort of cladding to the roofs themselves.
Could I just ask, please, Eamon, is this misleading? Is this a single building with what looks like three roofs on, or is this three separate buildings?
Again,
right next to each other?
it's one building. I'll just go back to the photographs.
It's one building.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's effectively one building. Again, I don't think there's any internal partitions between those. I imagine with inside you'll have sort of livestock, stockades or whatever that the farmer will use sort of as and when they're lambing or subdividing the building inside. But it's a very open, aerated building, which presumably meets the needs of the farmer.
Thank you, Councillor Frost.
Thank you. There's something behind it as well, isn't there? Once again, according to Google Earth. What is it that's behind it? Is it on your previous image?
Is it this?
So.
Again, these have been previously investigated. I think there's a couple of corrals and feeding silos that basically are required to store feed within the site. None of those, again, from memory, required planning permission. They were basically carried out under permitted development rights.
It looks quite large on Google Earth, but what you're saying is it's not as large as it looks.
No, again, officers have investigated those under the enforcement investigations and found nothing to be wanting in terms of requirement or need for planning permission.
Thank you, and sorry guys. Back to the previous slide. You pointed out that there's previous permission for, yeah, that's the one. The one that we previously got permission for. I think I'm right in saying that the reason why that was there before was because it means that that one where your cursor is on is hidden. Yeah, exactly. That's hidden from the road, so that in terms of the visual impact, you could only the public could only ever see the one immediately to your right in the dotted line. Is that correct?
Through you, Chairman, no. Basically, no, I was the case officer on the original application, so the judgment is looking at the pair of buildings and courtyard on a whole. What we're saying is that when you're up close to this, yes, you see the building in its immediate setting, but in terms of the wider landscape, or even if you drive up and down Catesby Road, it's very difficult to see the building, and I've found that previously. So yeah, when you turn in here, you look, wow, there's a building there on the hillside, but when you're actually driving around the area, it's very difficult to see the buildings. Sure. And again, that was my assessment of that permission, and that's the reason why we recommended it for approval. And I don't, whilst this has changed the orientation, I don't think this change and reorientation of the building, the fact it's physically present now on site, has had any worse impact on the immediate or wider landscape. So yes, you see it and it's within the field. There's a proposition or proposal and landscaping condition to help soften the edge of that site. But in terms of the wider landscape, because of the topography, intervening landscaping and the distance to the village and local residents, we consider it's an appropriate scale and appropriate design and style of building in this location.
Sure, I get that, but the point remains that had they done what they had permission to do, you wouldn't really be able to see the one on the left because it would have been hidden by the one on the right.
Well, again, the advantage is that that was side on to the building, but again, there's a public footpath that runs along this site, and again, there's quite a heavy field presence, so you would have seen those two buildings. But again, my view, yeah, the ideal scenario was, yeah, if that was built, we wouldn't be sitting here tonight. Exactly. But the applicants have chosen to do something different. We're required to judge it on its planning merits. Just because it's retrospective doesn't mean we can we can revisit everything.
No, sure.
I think what I'm saying is that, on balance, I think the proposal is acceptable.
But what's proposed is the same or very similar to what was refused on the application before. That's what, as far as I can tell, hasn't been talked about. Application number 0462 was a nearly identical application to this one, but it was refused.
Near identical, but again, no, that application I don't think was appealed. They submitted an application that was then approved, and this development's been carried out. You're entitled to come to a different.
My concern is
I, as an officer, have made a recommendation. I'm entirely familiar with the planning history of the site, but I've been to the site. I've looked at the proposal. Yes, it's unfortunate retrospective, but my assessment is that in terms of the needs for the site and the impact on the immediate and wider landscape, including the nearby conservation area, including the nearby settlement and residential, that on balance it's acceptable.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, we will move to public speaking now. Councillor Hasty has asked to speak, but he's out, not made it back from his parish meeting, obviously, but he has sent a statement in where Democratic Services are going to read out for us.
Thank you, Chair. Before I continue, I should just add that Dave Collins, who's registered for the applicant, is obviously not here. And we've not had any correspondence from him to advise whether he will be coming or when. This is the statement of Councillor Charlie Hasty, local ward member for Woodford and Weedon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of Helidon Parish Meeting. It's Planning Committee met on the 4th of August this year in an open public meeting, and we examined this application in detail. The site in question forms part of the wider Leam House estate and occupies a very prominent position at the entrance to our village and at the edge of the Helidon Conservation Area. For anyone familiar with Helidon, this is one of the key approaches into the village. The site in question has a long history of unauthorised developments and retrospective applications. The current application is for 3 barns constructed in a very dominant location on the brow of a hill overlooking Helidon village. The previous application for a small development at this same location was refused by the authority as it was considered to be too intrusive on the landscape. Members will recall that a previous application, DA/2020/2038, was approved for smaller and less intensive buildings at a location lower down in the landscape and therefore less intrusive. That scheme was considered at the time to have a manageable impact. The new proposal is materially different. These buildings are significantly more substantial in scale and presence. They are also approximately 200 metres west of a residential property. That resident and others nearby will now face a very real potential noise and general disturbance that was simply not part of the previously approved scheme. It would seem contradictory to grant consent for a development in a location previously refused that is substantially larger and more intrusive than the one already refused. It will also incentivise unauthorised developments and create a dangerous precedent that will encourage total disregard for the planning process. I've read the committee report very carefully and note the comments on the distance between the application site and the Helidon Conservation Area, paragraph 7.23, and between the application site and the nearest residential property, paragraph 7.18 to 7.22. I do not comment in any detail on these matters and invite the committee to come to their own judgment based on the evidence and the comments of the parish meeting. I note that the report presents a much more balanced view about the impact of the proposal on the wider landscape. In my view, this is the critical factor, paragraph 7.8 to 7.17, and it clearly chimes with the comments from the parish meeting. As the report acknowledges, the site is within the area of special landscape character and is therefore affected by policy ENV2 of Part 2 of the Daventry District Settlements and Countryside Local Plan. I've read carefully the relevant paragraphs of the committee report and I respect the conclusions drawn by the officer. However, on the balance of evidence, I suggest that the committee should take a different view and give very significant weight to the importance of safeguarding the area of special landscape character and refuse planning permission for the proposal. For the reasons set out by the parish meeting, I am not satisfied that the current planning application satisfies the requirements of either policy ENV2 of Part 2 of the local plan or the wider development plan. Similarly, I'm not satisfied that there are any material planning considerations which outweigh the contents of the development plan. These are key principles of the planning system. The proposed landscaping is also a major concern. What is proposed here is minimal hedging around the building and a small handful of trees. Given the exposed hilltop location, this will do very little to soften the visual impact or integrate the buildings into the surrounding landscape. When you take the scale of the structure and the sensitive setting together, the result is a development that fails to preserve the character of the area of the special landscape. Members will know that Helidon takes its design guidance very seriously. The Helidon design statement is clear about protecting rural approaches, minimising visual intrusion and ensuring that new development respects the landscape. Moreover, policy RA3 of the Daventry District Settlements and Countryside Part 2 local plan sets out strong expectations for protecting the open countryside and safeguarding the character of our historic and rural settlements. In my view, this proposal conflicts with both. Members, my comments are made constructively and the community's concerns are genuine. This is a sensitive site at the gateway to the Helidon Conservation Area and decisions made here will have a lasting consequence for our community. For these reasons, the parish meeting concluded that this application should be refused and I agree with its comments. Thank you for your time. And that concludes the statement of Councillor Hastie.
Thank you very much. Move to the debate.
Apologies for hogging this again. Guys, just to reiterate what I touched on earlier, the sequence of events here is peculiar. In summary, the property was bought about 10 years ago, and on around 2000, Eamon knows this because he's been involved throughout, on around the sort of summer of 2017, the section of the hedge was cut out and a track was put in. This was picked up on by Catesby and Helidon parish councils, and Eamon's team, through negotiation, persuaded them to put in a retrospective application. This is just for the gate and for the access that was then approved. January 2019, they put in another application for a small barn that was once again agreed. But by a year and a half later, things had grown into, and I really want to stress this, a barn, and it would be quite interesting if we could bring this up. I can send, just earlier on I compiled a link, an application that is absolutely identical in nearly every way to the one that's before you tonight. The planning committee turned it down. I was on the committee actually. The planning committee turned it down. And as Eamon's quite right, they didn't go to appeal. What they did instead was to put in an application for the one that you saw a few minutes ago, that one in dotted lines. It was a close-run thing, but the committee was persuaded to go with it because, as I touched on earlier, one of the smaller barns was basically blocking out the other one. It was on that basis that it was approved. And now what's happened is the applicant has simply built what they originally applied for but got refused for. I suppose hope that no one picked up on it. The first people that picked up on it were Helidon Parish Council on the 28th of October 2022. The enforcement team are busy, I get that. But by May of the 2023, there was still no action, and I've got Catesby and Helidon sort of bending my ear, if you like. And then in the intervening time, and Eamon knows all this to be true, Eamon's team have tried to put together enforcement notices. There was problems in legal services that I think Teresa will know about. To cut a long story short, it's taken a very long time, as Eamon touched on earlier. So here we are today. But the point is that what you've got in front of you tonight has already been refused, and what I'm looking at here, it says on the document, the decision notice, DA 2020-0462, it reads quite clearly, and this is all we need to do, I would suggest. Just repeat it. It just says, the local planning authority considers that there is insufficient justification for the revised siting of the proposed agricultural building, and as such, it would have a significant adverse impact on the character, beauty and tranquility of this rural location, contrary to the provisions of policy RA6, Part 8 of the Settlements and Countryside Plan, Part 2 for Daventry District Council, blah, 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 by reason of its siting in a prominent part of the local landscape. In other words, the work's already been done. There's a precedent. We've got the reasons. We know they're valid. They're within policy. We know they'll stand up to appeal because previously they didn't even bother going to appeal. I think it's a relatively straightforward case, I'm afraid. What do you guys think?
Councillor Breeze.
Well, thank you. That's been really, really illuminating into how you can twist and turn in the planning system. But it is down to land use rather than the character of the applicant, unfortunately. But I'm fairly persuaded by Councillor Frost's arguments. I'd be interested to hear what others say. And if this was indeed what the applicant wanted and got refused, but then built in anyway, my goodness, we're going to get on and do all sorts of things, aren't we?
Thank you, Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this application, this application has come before us this evening, and in my opinion, irrespective of the previous decisions, I personally don't have an issue with this application. I understand Councillor Frost's history. Obviously, you know, is quite clear on his history on this application. Personally, I don't have an issue with this. I value your opinions, but I don't have an issue with it. Councillors.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm concerned about the size of it because it is massive. It's bigger than the tennis court and the surrounds that's there. You know, it is dominating the landscape. I'm not sure where we stand with that on as a planning regard, but it is huge.
Again, through you, Chairman, the building's there. You can go off and look at it yourself and drive around the village and drive up and down the Catesby Road and do as I did, walk up the local hills, go in around the village and have a look at it for yourselves and then make your own minds up if you feel that there's insufficient information here. As I say, the building isn't going anywhere. As regards the size of the building, that's considered to be sufficient to meet the needs of the agricultural holding and the operations of the farmer. And I'm not provided with any evidence to counter that. So it's up to yourselves, but as I say, rather than making a decision here on the night based on a couple of photographs or whatever, you have got an enforcement notice and appeal still pending, and that's due to be heard. And rather than making decisions where you might find, for whatever reason, you create complications in the enforcement state, give yourselves the opportunity to go around the site, walk the footpaths and walk the roads about there, obviously wearing high-vis vests, etc., making sure health and safety is looked after, but it's there, it's not going anywhere, so that's up to yourselves.
Thank you, Eamon. That's a quite sensible suggestion. I'm concerned that's what was applied for initially was 2/3 the size of that, with the gap in the middle. But you're right. You're looking at it on a map. It's not so easy. Would anybody be willing? I'm just throwing it out there. Would anybody be willing to defer, or are you adamant that you want to do something else?
I was just going to say, would the committee be interested to see this thing I keep banging on about, the previous application 0462, so you can see for yourselves what was put in front of committee, or do you take my word for it that it really was what you see before tonight? I just sometimes, you know, if you think that'd be helpful, I can send you a link to it and you can just bring it up on the screen. But
again, through you, Chairman, I mean, I think rather than being furnished with sort of information from various sources, a deferral for a site visit and for the concerns of the local councillor on what has gone before. Ultimately, that previous permission was refused, but that was never tested on appeal. We'll never know whether an inspector would have come along and said, what's the problem, or not. We just don't know. The fact remains is that a subsequent application was submitted, was judged to be acceptable. Yes, that hasn't been implemented, but now you've got a building that was there, but was very similar in terms of its dimensions. What you're being asked to consider is the reorientation of that building and the filling in of a gap between the two. But it's up to yourselves.
Yeah, I'm aware of this thing we have where there's permission to build. After that, what gets built gets built. Councillor Harris?
Yeah, I'm still not entirely sure of my position on this. I would say one thing, which is this is not the first and this is not the last time that we will get applications of this nature. I suspect all of us in all of our wards have people we could even name, should we choose to, who use the planning system and test the planning system, and that will continue, unfortunately. It's a permissive system, and that's the difficulty that we've got. So, you know, I appreciate that there is history here, and I do think that, you know, any history should be taken into account in terms of any refusals. But personally, I think we've either got to look at this application in its own right now, or we have to, as the officer suggested, potentially look to a deferral for councillors to go and take a better look. But, you know, either way, I guess looking at it from this angle, if I'm interpreting it correctly, we would have seen one of those blocks as opposed to three of those blocks, I guess, technically from this particular angle. Have I got that right, Eamon, in terms of my orientation? Because they would have been the other side rather than
again,
laterally.
You would have had a building side on roughly in that location, because there is a bit of an overlap. This building overlaps the approval. So, but it would have been a long elevation with a ridge. What's happened is, you know, it's been turned, and that's what you're now seeing. Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you. It's different from what was approved, but ultimately you have to decide, well, what is the planning harm when compared with the previous approval? The overall dimensions in terms of the area covered by these three buildings, or one building we want to call it, is pretty much identical to the area covered by the original approval. The materials being used are the same. The profiles of the buildings in terms of the roof and height to the eaves is the same. The only difference is that we've introduced this element. But as I say, the building's there, so you can see it in all its glory or not see it in all its glory. This is the most exposed that you see the building. This is in terms of driving down Catesby Road, very difficult to see it. It doesn't stand out in the landscape as you might think it would do. But again, that's the opportunity for members to say, well, not so sure about this, let's go and have a look at it. Then you'll be furnished with the full facts when you come back before, and clearly we'll need to address the concerns of Councillor Frost in terms of the previous planning history. But as I say, yes, there was a refusal. It wasn't appealed, therefore it wasn't tested, so we don't know what that outcome would ever have been. What you now have before you is a retrospective permission application, but you've got to put that to one side, the fact that it's retrospective, and judge it on its planning merits. So,
just a second. Pause for your thoughts. Sorry, Councillor Beryl was waiting for a while, and I'll let Councillor Harris jump in.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, quite clearly the applicant, Councillor Frost, he hasn't followed the rules quite clearly. But I would like to almost, not give him the benefit, that is the wrong terminology, but I would like to maybe do a drive-by and a little site visit before we make any more judgment. I don't know how the rest of the committee feel.
Yeah. So would
yes.
Yeah, somebody propose a deferral, and then we'll for a site visit, and then we'll have a second and we'll take a vote on that. So you're proposing that?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Thank you. Second. Thank you, Councillor Frost. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Chair. Normally we defer for a site visit to see what a building might look like, whereas you will get to see the real thing. But the proposal is to defer for a site visit. Obviously we need a reason. I'll put this to you as the proposer, Councillor Beryl, to enable the committee to assess the size and scale of the development and its impact, possible impact or lack of impact on the character of the local landscape setting. Is that sufficient? Yes. Councillor Frost, sufficient. Over to you, Chair, for the vote.
Thank you. Can we have a show of hands for the deferral, then, please, as proposed? Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Item number 10 has been withdrawn, which brings us to item 11, any urgent business. And I don't believe there are any items of urgent business. So we'll get the site visit organised when we will, and then our next meeting will be held, I believe it's the 4th of December, not the 18th of November.
Yes, Chair, 4th of November, 4th of December is our next meeting. Apologies. Thank you.
Hopefully you'll have John back, and I will disappear back into the ether. Thank you very much. Meeting's closed. Thank you.